Congratulations on the creative way of celebrating Independence Day. Thanks for having us.
Love of the embassy.
Welcome, how are you?
Okay. Yes. Yes. Yeah, welcome. How are you? How are you?
Fine.
Oh, yeah, very fine. Yeah. You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Celebrate with you.
Yes, my pleasure too. Thank you.
And Massimiliano is my friend at home.
Yes.
He's coming. He's family in Nigeria. His father.
Yes, my father was from.
You're welcome. Yeah.
From Italian
I
Embassy.
know.
Welcome. Thank you very much for the invitation and congratulations for the mission. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to see you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation.
I'd like to introduce Mr. Norberto Alessandro, he's our CEO.
Thank you.
It's the business card of
Per ogni
any
evenienza.
assistance is at your disposal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Grazie.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you. How are you? Thank you.
This one's
Hello. Yes, welcome. Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah, very fine. No problem.
And the family.
Very okay.
Well done.
Thank you so much. So elegant. Great picture. Please selfie. I never seen it like that. Thanks very much.
It's nice to see you.
Please have it. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, friends of the embassy, good morning to all of you. I am Major General Godwin George Umo, retired, ON, and Nigeria's ambassador to the Holy See. I have the singular honor and privilege to welcome all of you here this morning. We're going to have a series of presentations that would dovetail into the other, and all in an attempt to meet the theme of this symposium, which is cultural diplomacy, global peace, and shared prosperity.
Good morning, Your Eminence,
Excellencies, you're welcome to the Nigeria's 59th independence anniversary and the 43rd anniversary of Nigeria's diplomatic relations with the Holy See, and the Symposium on Cultural Diplomacy, Global Peace and Shared Prosperity. First, on our program this morning, please kindly permit me to introduce myself. My name is Patrick Imologome, the Head of Chancery of the Embassy of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to the Holy See. Without wasting much of our time, I would like to invite us to commence this program immediately with a group photograph. I would like to invite His Eminence and other ambassadors to please kindly step forward so that we can commence. Your Eminence, after the group photograph, we are going to cut the cake.
So after the count of 59, yes, 59, 10, 20, 30, 50, 55, 59.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. While still standing, please, can we have the national anthem of both the Holy See and the Federal Republic of Nigeria? our special guest of honor, Cardinal Pietro Parolin, to please come forward and take a seat on the podium. On this note, I would like to invite His Excellency, the Nigerian ambassador to the Holy See, to come forward and do his introductory remarks at this point. Thank you very much. Your Excellency, sir.
Thank you very much. Let me at this point use the opportunity of the presence of our guest of honor to welcome you once again to this ceremony. I want to stand on the protocol that had already been established and to say that it is really a privilege and great honor for me to have a galaxy of eminent persons like you in this symposium. The ceremony, like we've been told, is two-edged in the sense that we are celebrating the 59th anniversary of Nigeria's independence, as well as the 43rd anniversary of our special relationship with the Holy See. Now, in 1960, October 1st to be exact, the Union Jack, which is also known as the British flag, was lowered, and that of Nigeria was raised, signifying the start of a new political order in Nigeria. The dreams were very large, and of course, our forefathers started on a good note, and unfortunately, some 6 years down the road, there was an interruption through a military coup, which eventually led to a 30-month civil war that culminated in the new phase of development that I can say in Nigeria. Now, we had a situation whereby the beautiful democracy that started in 1960 on October 1st was punctuated. And then, of course, a small interregnum took place between 1979 and 83. And, of course, again, the military took over. But it is heartwarming to announce to you that since 1999 till date, spanning a period of 20 years, that we have enjoyed an uninterrupted democracy, and therefore has a very great enabling environment for not just social but also economic interactions. Secondly, I want to say that the relationship between the Holy See and Nigeria ought to have even started as far back as 1960. However, I told you there was some kind of interregnum, and that did not provide a good atmosphere for diplomatic juncture. And therefore, it was only in 1976, April to be exact, that the establishment of diplomatic relations with the Holy See was actually attained. So we are happy and very lucky to have a special relationship which the Holy Father Francis has been exhibiting in every occasion. He prays for Nigeria on a daily basis, and of course we also pray for him to continue with the good job that he's doing. It is therefore my great pleasure to welcome you to this symposium, which is actually anchored on some of the teachings of the Holy Father. World peace is one of the things that he does not joke with. And of course, he has demonstrated times without number his propensity for prosperity for the entire world. He had exhibited them when he was given a Lamborghini. In fact, when he was saying that he wasn't going to use it, I was raising my hand that please, let me have it. Because I think I would have felt better driving a Lamborghini. But to him, it was not something that would add value to the lives of the people of the earth. And therefore chose to sell it off and use the money to help the poor. So this team is actually looking at far beyond what it may seem to be. And without wasting too much of our time, because we are going to really enjoy this symposium, let me thank Cardinal Arinze, who is our father, and has been very, very supportive of what we do in our embassy. And it is a rare privilege to drag him out from his rest and then bring him to come and be part of this assembly. Finally, let me use this opportunity to welcome all of you, all the ambassadors who came from France, who came from Germany, and the deputy ambassador in Germany too. I have ambassadors from which other country now? Spain was supposed to be here, but last minute change of heart. And then of course we have our Nigerian ambassador to Italy, who is my co-host in this occasion. So once again, thank you all for all of you to keep the time to ensure that you show love to us. We also love you. Please sit back and enjoy the symposium. Welcome once again.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Without wasting much time, at this point, I want to invite His Eminence, Cardinal Pietro Parolin, to give us his address. Your Eminence.
Your Excellency, Mr. Godwin George Umo, Ambassador of Nigeria to the Holy See, Your Eminence, Cardinal Francis Arinze, distinguished speakers, ambassadors, distinguished guests, fathers, sisters, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. It is my honor to address you on this special occasion as we commemorate the 59th anniversary of Nigeria's independence and the 43rd anniversary of diplomatic relations between Nigeria and the Holy See. First of all, I wish to thank Ambassador Umo for inviting me to be with you and to say a few words at the beginning of this symposium. But I am not only coming as the Secretary of State, but as a friend of Nigeria, because you know that I started my diplomatic career in '86 in Lagos, many years ago. And then I consider myself a friend of Nigeria and of Nigerians. In so doing, I am happy to extend to you, Mr. Ambassador, and through you to the authorities and all the citizens of Nigeria, as well as to all who are gathered here, the good wishes and blessings of the Holy Father, Pope Francis. The theme of this symposium, Cultural Diplomacy, Global Peace and Shared Prosperity, is very timely. Culture is comprised of all those characteristics and knowledge of a particular group of people, encompassing language, religion, cuisine, social habits, music, arts, etc. A philosopher historian once commented that centuries of existence are required to generate a little history. Many more centuries are necessary to create a little civilization, and an even greater number is required to distill a culture. As such, culture is the embodiment and outcome of centuries of history and the development of a civilization. The Holy See bases its definition of culture on the Second Vatican Council, and I quote from Gaudium et Spes. Culture is defined in relation to human beings, and all cultural activities are both from and for mankind. Pope Benedict XVI recalled on the occasion of the colloquium Culture, Reason and Freedom on May 2005 with words borrowed from St. John Paul II's 1980 speech at the headquarters of UNESCO. In June last year, when Mr. Philip Pulella, chief of Reuters Rome Bureau, asked about the relations of the Holy See with China, His Holiness Pope Francis responded by indicating 3 different paths leading to diplomatic relations. The first one is the dialogue between the official delegates of both parties. The second is dialogue of everyone and with everyone. And the third path, which according to the Holy Father is the most important, is the dialogue between cultures. Pope Francis has meant it in 2 different ways. It is the intercultural dialogue and the cooperation between the parties by organizing intercultural events. This part is very important because in Pope Francis' vision there exists an inescapable bond that unites people with their culture. Since 1965, the Holy See has been very aware of the importance for the Church of dialogue with contemporary culture and of its relationship with different cultures. In the Vatican Museum, St. Paul VI created a collection of contemporary art, and in his exhortation Evangelii Nuntiandi, he drew attention to the need to evangelize the culture. Therefore, in an age which demands a fresh approach to international relations in the context of turbulent times, where we are forced to face the threat of global climate change, religious extremism, and controversial military conflicts, cultural diplomacy takes a relevant place in promoting peace and the consequent prosperity. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude this opening address, I wish to state that the Catholic Church remains committed to accompany Nigeria in all its efforts to ensure the spiritual as well as material well-being of its people, while appreciating the continuing Holy See Nigeria bilateral relations. I wish a brighter future for the nation and its beloved people. Thank you for your kind attention. May God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Your Eminence. I'm sure with that opening address, we all have an idea of the package we have put together here for everyone today. On that note, I would like to inform that we have 2 goodwill addresses here today from His Eminence, one from His Eminence, Cardinal Arinze, and the second one from Professor Paola Caselia. So I would like to invite His Eminence now to give us his goodwill address.
Your Eminence, Your Excellency, Ambassador of Nigeria to the Holy See, Your Excellencies, the various ambassadors, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Nigeria, arise and walk. As our dear country, Nigeria, celebrates her 59th independence anniversary and also the 43rd anniversary of our diplomatic relations with the Holy See, I greet our motherland. I greet all the people here gathered from far and near and invoke God's blessing on Nigeria. It is fitting that the Embassy of Nigeria to the Holy See has chosen as the theme for this day's celebration the incisive challenge, cultural diplomacy, global peace, and shared prosperity. We all owe a debt of gratitude to His Excellency, our Ambassador, to his staff, and to all the others who, in one way or the other, especially those who are going to give lectures, we thank them all. They have all contributed to the success of this day's event. Our hope, our Nigeria, our prayer, may our country Nigeria, this great country of rich potentials, be guided at every level by leaders who give prominence to the common good rather than to their private bank account or those of their friends. May our country Nigeria be blessed and continue to be blessed with leaders who do not only win an election, but who actually show excellence and competence in their service of their people, so that when they are no longer in service, active, they look back with joy and contentment, and the people with gratitude. Nigeria needs citizens who ask what they can do for our country, and not what they can get from our country, although we don't want them to get nothing. If corruption is to be uprooted, if human dignity is to be respected, if security of life and property is to be the normal thing, and if youth unemployment is to be radically reduced, then Nigerians with great and noble minds, clear ideas, and sustained courage, such Nigerians are needed in great numbers, and there are many of them. May God bless them all, and may God bless Nigeria with people of such caliber that our country in Africa and in the world will look at its present and its future with joy and peace and confidence. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you very much, Your Eminence, for that message. Without wasting much time, at this point, I want to call on our Professor Paula Caselia, to give us a short message.
Your Excellency Ambassador Godwin George Umo, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very glad and I'm very grateful to be here today on the occasion of the commemoration of the 59th anniversary of Nigeria's independence and the 43rd anniversary of Nigeria's diplomatic relations with the Holy See. What a better occasion to highlight the importance of solid and stable diplomatic relations and emphasize culture as a tool to pledge them. Cultural diplomacy is, in fact, absolutely crucial in today's and tomorrow's global world, and specifically in international relations, from any angle they may be considered. The resources of cultural diplomacy is so relevant and strategic in the global scenario that Università Cattolica chose to create the first European program in cultural and digital diplomacy, which is already in its third year as we speak, directed by Professor Federica Olivares, in partnership with Oxford University and University of Southern California. An international program with an innovative intersection of disciplines, combining 3 different fields of study: public diplomacy and international relations, soft power and cultural diplomacy for the global reputation of countries and cities. This program is our contribution to create a new breed of citizens of the world, able to innovate international relations and social practices through a cultural diplomacy approach and strategy. Cultural diplomacy is the arm of a country's soft power, contributing to the influence and attractiveness of a global public actor, capable through the universal language of culture and the arts of building a global reputation for a country, of reopening interrupted geopolitical dialogues, and with reconciliation projects in post-conflict areas. In this age of geopolitical tensions, cultural diplomacy represents also a strategic tool which can tear down otherwise impenetrable walls, as we mentioned before. Since cultural diplomacy may be described at its best as a course of actions based on the exchange of ideas, values, traditions, and other aspects of culture and identity, whether to create or strengthen relationships, promote national interests, and enhance social-cultural cooperation, in more recent years, strategies of reconciliation, peace enforcement, and peace building have identified culture as the real cement in post-conflict situations and in fragile areas of the world. All these practices and experiences are proofs of how a discipline as cultural diplomacy, in its various and innumerable applications, can prove to be not only greatly relevant for today's and tomorrow's international relations, but it can also represent a varied fields of innovation of social practices for the great open challenges that confront our societies. In a world where peace is continuously threatened, the theme of this symposium could not have been addressed at a better time. But we must stay hopeful for our next generations. In order to be capable of hope, we have to be competent and able to create new citizens of the world, skilled in the difficult art of mutual understanding and respect. That is our mission, clearly stated by the motto of our program in cultural and digital diplomacy. We want to be a force for good to the world. Thank you. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Professor. I think that brings us to the beginning of the second part of this event, which is the symposium. And for that, I would like to invite His Excellency, Ambassador Godwin Umo, to set the tone for the second part of the event. Your Excellency, sir.
The topic is clear that cultural diplomacy has a part to play in global peace and shared prosperity. And of course, it has, like has been said by many speakers, the cultural diplomacy occupies a center stage of academic discourses in recent times, especially after the end of the Cold War and the collapse of all the walls that we know. In fact, this position has been reinforced by Ruiz and Zamorano that soft power and cultural policies have been conceptualized and deployed as tools to launder countries' images in all perceptions. That was in 2014. And of course, it has also come to the fore that you can use cultural diplomacy as a form of support for political and economic goals through, like I said, soft power rather than force. In fact, Melissa Aronzik's position on national branding policies is a forerunner to what I've already said, and that it is a nexus between cultural diplomacy and prosperity. And I quote, when she said, culture can be ultimately understood to be a way to achieve economic goals, 2008. Of course, when it comes to the issue of weaponization of the social media and ethical issues, and that's why I begin to ask, will it not be better for us to start thinking about the rejuvenation of ethical issues, and then maybe that will rescue the situation on the social media? Well, Professor Bede Ukwije is here on hand. He will tell us more. And then when it comes to cultural diplomacy, xenophobia, and African integration, I've said, in passing, that the improper employment of the social media will lead to dissemination of falsehood, inflammation of passions, conflict, and hatred. The intense version of hate is actually what it is referred to as xenophobia. And this tends to disintegrate rather than unite. And of course, we have seen in Africa where efforts have been made in the past to make sure that there's regional, sub-regional integration. And then that culminated in the 2019 African Continental Free Trade, which was just signed a couple of months back. Are we sure, therefore, that there is prospect for African integration, cohesion, and prosperity? Now, there's a man who has done his research and will tell you shortly, and that is Dr. Nweke. Now, on the issue of cultural diplomacy as a precursor for global peace and shared prosperity, can prosperity actually take root in the absence of peace? Well, Professor Okemana is here to explain and see how the imperatives of cultural diplomacy can actually play a part in global peace and prosperity. Globalization, changes in socio-economic and geopolitical dynamics have brought about cultural diplomacy, and actors now are not the same actors that used to be. It was actually a government issue before, but now all manner of people are in it. So both government and non-government actors are in it. For instance, you have the NGOs, the Nollywood, the film people of Nigeria, and then the Ndona Foundation, who actually I'm representing here. And then, of course, the concept has therefore changed. And that's why people like the Semie and Mariondo Zamorano have advocated that there has to be some kind of review of the concept of cultural diplomacy. Now, besides the concept, there are other challenges. Like I said, we have an eminent the diplomat here in the person of Honorable Antonio Morabito, who will be telling us how we are supposed to go about that. And after that, we'll have a 5-minute leg stretch within the premises, and then we'll come back for a few minutes of questions and interactions. And thereafter, like with the teams of guests, there's a cultural aspect in the whole thing. And therefore, we shall see some cultural dances, foods, and even more. And let me at this point stop and thank you for coming. I can only tell you to sit back, enjoy. Thank you very much. I really want to thank you for coming, and then thank all of you for coming to witness this birthday.
I will stay for the lecture. Okay, His Eminence Cardinal Pietro Parolin. We understand that His Eminence worked in Nigeria for 3 years as a Papa Nuncio.
Yes, yes.
Can we just, in a few words, know how your experience was back home in Nigeria, considering the cultural diversity in Nigeria, as we are discussing about culture today?
Yeah, it was really, for me, it was the first experience in the diplomatic service of the Holy See. And really, I thank God because I started it in Nigeria, which is a rich country in all aspects. When you think about people, when you think about resources, human resources, spiritual resources, material resources, when you think about culture. And really for me it was a good experience just to start this dialogue with other countries and with other people and with other cultures, because never been before outside Italy. And really, I think that is a good, it is also a challenge for Nigeria, a challenge. How? This is an idea which the Holy Father is presenting often, how to transform the differences not into division and conflicts, but into enrichment, a mutual enrichment. And I think that Nigeria has many chances just to become a country and a population in which this can happen, to transform the cultural differences into a great mutual enrichment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The first speaker, who is Father Professor Bede Ngwije, and is going to talk about the weaponization of the social media and ethical issues. Please help me to welcome the Prof to the podium.
Your Eminence, Your Excellency, the Nigerian Ambassador to the Holy See, Your Excellencies, the other ambassadors, distinguished audience. I've been asked to speak on the theme, weaponization of social media and ethical issues. In this reflection, we adopt the hypothesis that the use of social media has become problematic in such a way that they have been turned into weapons of violence and destruction that not only endanger real communication in the society, but also destroy human dignity. Social media here refers to the collective of online communications channels dedicated to community-based input, interaction, content sharing, and collaboration. For example, Facebook, Twitter, Google+, YouTube, Instagram, Telegram, etc. Social media platforms have dramatically different structure than previous media technologies like radio, television. Content can be relayed among users with no significant third-part filtering, fact-checking, or editorial judgment. An individual user with no track record or reputation can, in some cases, reach as many readers as Fox News, CNN, BBC, the New York Times, etc. Now, this has serious implications for communication in the contemporary society. Our reflection will be done in three parts. First, we argue that while social media facilitate the circulation of independent information, connecting people and helping in the defense of the most vulnerable, they have also become weapons of destruction of people and institutions, especially through the spread of fake news. We further show that what is implied in the spread of fake news is the erosion of the sense of truth and the establishment of the reign of falsehood, leading to the loss of the sense of the sacredness of the human person. We conclude by calling for the retrieval of the ethical question of truth. If social media have to remain instruments of communication in the noble sense of the word, that is connecting peoples and cultures, then there needs to be serious education on the ethical use of social media, which will include the discernment of truth and the respect of the dignity of the human person. Now, we use the word weapon in its complex sense, to be fair. First, as something such as a gun, knife, bomb, that is used for fighting or attacking someone, or for defending yourself when someone is attacking you. Second, weapon could also mean something such as a skill, idea, tool that is used to win a contest or achieve something. So in that sense, a weapon is not necessarily negative. All depends on the purpose of its use. Now, social media in the positive, as weapon, but in the positive sense of it. Weapon of the weak. In the final message of the Synod for the Youth held in October 2018, the Synod Father stated clearly that the digital world is one of social political engagement and active citizenship and can facilitate the circulation of independent information that can provide effective protection for the most vulnerable. The social media often play important role in advocacy. Groups are able to mobilize and voice their concerns if their interests are disturbed. Groups strive for attention of political decision makers in open competition with each other. The interactivity of social media allows interest groups to build communities and engage in direct conversations with their supporters in a personal and cost-efficient manner. In that sense, also, social media have become the weapon of a new generation that would normally not have any force in political arena. A good example is that of Egypt. We know that on the 28th of January 2011, the then government of Hosni Mubarak shut down internet in order to shut down the use of social media. The 18 days relentless protest fueled by the social media put an end to 38 years of authoritarian regime in Egypt. In that sense, social media brought to the Egyptians a sense of self-empowerment through the capacity to speak and assemble that was previously not there. Social media played the same role in Tunisia, in Libya, in Iraq. Spreading fake news can serve to advance specific goals, influence political decision, and serve economic interests. Now, studies conducted in some American universities show how fake news considerably influenced the last elections in the United States of America and also in the European Union. Social media in Nigeria were filled with rumors of a second wedding of President Muhammad Buhari with Sadiya Farouk, Minister of Humanitarian Affairs. And common to all the blogs which reported the rumors was the claim that a source in the presidency informed them of the purported wedding. And attached to some of the wedding rumors on Twitter and Facebook was an invitation card which read, "The families of the late Alhaji Buhari Daura and that of late Alhaji Umar Farouk cordially invite to the wedding ceremony of their children, Alhaji Muhammad Buhari and Hajia Sadiya Umar Farouk, scheduled to take place as follows. Date, Friday, October 11, 2019, time 2 p.m. Venue, Central Mosque, Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, Nigeria." Now, however, the wedding rumor turned out to be false. The invitation card was never designed by either the Dauras or the Farouks or the presidents. Even though no such wedding held, it created a lot of buzz on social media, especially on Twitter. Now, such stories spread so quickly that even authoritative deniers failed to contain the damage. Now, Pope Francis judged the issue of fake news so serious that he dedicated his message for the 2018 World Communications Day to the issue of fake news, entitled "The Truth Will Set You Free: Fake News and Journalism for Peace." Now, what are the implications of fake news for communication? We will single out two among many others. The first is the erosion of the sense of truth, and the second one is the loss of the sense of the sacredness of the human person. The concept of truth is displaced. Now, the most ancient philosophical concept of truth as adequatio intellectus et rei, that is, that truth is the correspondence of object and intellect. Now, this concept is displaced and replaced with the question of values which have become relative. What interests contemporary society is not what is true, but rather what works, what is effective, what is valuable. And this is in connection with the dictatorship of relativism vehemently denounced by Pope Benedict XVI. Already, as Cardinal Ratzinger, during the conclave in 2005, he declared, I quote, "We are building a dictatorship of relativism that does not recognize anything as definitive and whose ultimate standard consists solely of one's ego and desires." In African traditions, the human person is understood as a network of relationships. And the best word to define this network is relatedness. And this is embodied in the Igbo proverb, in the Igbo language, we say, "Ifekulo, ifo. When something stands, something else stands beside it, which means that nothing stands alone. My humanity is inextricably bound up in yours. And this means that to exist is to be related. On the other hand, nobody is isolated. The human person is sacred because the human person is a network of relationship between the visible and the invisible. And the sacred is approached with reverence and deep respect. Profanation of the sacred is considered as abomination. So, in this sense, the African understanding of the human person is also very close to the Christian understanding of the person. I will not bother you because we don't have time. It is the Christian theology that offered the understanding of person that we have today in Christian anthropology. But the human person as a communion, being as communion, being as a relatedness. In the practice of fake news, the human person that is being as communion is distorted. In that sense, humanity is destroyed. But now let's get it right here. Both the perpetrator and the victim are destroyed. We tend to think that there is only one victim. In reality, all are victims. In his book, No Future Without Forgiveness, Archbishop Desmond Tutu of South Africa states that in the process of dehumanizing another, in inflicting untold harm and suffering, inexorably, the perpetrator is being dehumanized as well. If you understand that we are connected, if I try to destroy the other, I'm destroying myself because it's humanity that I'm destroying. My last point now. How can the society respond to the weaponization of social media that destroys the human person and humanity in general? Naturally, the first thing that comes to mind is to ask governments to reinforce institutions and legal structures aimed at developing regulations for curbing the phenomenon of misinformation and fake news. In his encyclical, Veritatis Splendor, the splendor of the truth, Pope John Paul II responded elaborately to this fundamental moral question. John Paul II stated clearly that this question must be put in connection with the question of teleology that has been eclipsed in the modern society. What is the end? What is the goal and end of human life? And this is portrayed in the dialogue between the young rich man and Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 9, verses 16 to 22. Now, the young man asked Jesus, "What must I do to possess eternal life?" And Jesus answers him, "If you wish to enter into life, keep the commandments." Now, what are the commandments? You must not kill. You must not commit adultery. You must not steal. You must not bring false witness. Honor your father and your mother, and you must love your neighbor as yourself. It means that the commandments are the first necessary step on the journey towards freedom and on the journey to life. It is therefore urgent to reinforce education for truth. What does that mean? It means that people have to be taught how to discern, evaluate, and understand our deepest desires and inclinations, lest we lose sight of what is good and yield to every temptation, especially the temptation of power. Religious, social institutions, and schools should create educational programs aimed at helping people to interpret and assess information produced in the media, teaching them how to unmask falsehood and refrain from contributing to the spread of disinformation. If contemporary men and women understand this fundamental issue, then communication will be at the service of authentic culture of encounter. As Pope Francis says in his message for World Communications Day 2014, we really communicate when communication makes us neighbors for one another. Communication is really about realizing that we are all human beings, children of God. Communication is neighborliness. Thank you so much.
Without wasting time, we call on the next presenter, Dr. Paulinus Nweke, to handle the next one. Thank you.
Paulinus Nweke. I'm not a Jesuit. I'm a Catholic priest of the Archdiocese of Jos, Nigeria, and I teach at the Gregorian University. Apart from my ministry as a priest, I specialize in sociology, political sociology to be precise, and I do a lot of work on ethnicity and nationalism. I begin by thanking His Excellency, Ambassador Godwin, for taking the initiative to organize the symposium. Symposium of this nature at a time researchers, policymakers, and the diplomatic community are exploring alternatives to the more traditional forms of diplomacy. I'm grateful that you invited me. Now we begin. The topic is African integration and the challenge of xenophobia, the role of cultural diplomacy. And we are going to dwell on the role of cultural diplomacy in the integration, in the project of African integration. So we go to the background. A little background. You know that the transformation of the Organization of African Unity to African Union brought about changes also in the relationships between governments in Africa. Particularly, there was a move or a transition from emphasis on sovereignty and non-interference, which was actually the focus, if I may say, to a large extent, at the period of OAU, African Organization of African Unity. Now we're talking more about collaboration, solidarity, and integration. And the Article 3A of the Constitutive Act of the African Union states it clearly. In fact, it's one of the objectives of the African Union. You can imagine that that is the first objective, to achieve greater unity and solidarity between the African countries and the peoples of Africa. When we talk about cultural diplomacy, the meeting of cultures don't just meet like that. Sometimes there are clashes, like we hear of a clash of civilization by Huntington, but there are clashes. And how do we address those clashes? This fellow, Gabriel Allport, right in 1954, had already proposed a theory called the contact hypothesis, or intergroup contact theory, in which he says that under appropriate conditions, contact between people of different cultures could help improve mutual understanding and cooperation. I want us to underline this, take this, under appropriate conditions. And what are those conditions? That means that there must be a policy, there must be something institutional that will guide these contacts, because there are so many contacts. So a new approach came up, the approach of multiculturalism. What is it? That yes, people can live together, but let them maintain their identities. Oh, they had a very strong opinion. They should be confined. What is the reason? Somebody like Parek said, the cultural identity of some groups, minorities, should not have to be confined to the private sphere, while the language, culture, and religion of others, the majority, enjoy a public monopoly and are treated as the norm. For a lack of recognition is damaging to people's self-esteem and is not conducive to encouraging the full participation of everyone in public sphere. Correct. That is right. But problems came up also, what we call today the crisis of multiculturalism. Mind you, multiculturalism is a policy. It's not the fact of having different cultures in a society. That is another thing. A multicultural society is different from the policy of multiculturalism. Now, they came up with that, but we saw the rise of ethnic ghettos and some autocephalous cultural communities. From there, now we are at the stage of evolving interculturalism. We say, no, we cannot absorb these cultures, minority cultures cannot be absorbed in the bigger ones, but then, yes, they can coexist, but there should be something. They should have common values, common basis for coexistence. And that is the stage we are now. Yes, there are great problems. Movement of people around Africa, yes. Informal movements that are not controlled and coordinated by governments. But then there are also progresses. Progresses have been made in the area of integration. It's not like nothing has been done. For example, you can think about the peer review mechanism, the panel of the wise in Africa, the new partnership for Africa's development, and now recently African Continental Free Trade Agreement that we are moving. In fact, we are embracing with full force. But I think that this last one, which is the interest of most governments, if not carefully handled, will still bring up a lot of xenophobic attitudes. What is the downside of all this? The problem is that they are too elitist. They are discussed among politicians, bureaucrats, academics, and technocrats. Ordinary Africans are neither well informed about them, nor carried along properly in their implementation. Now, xenophobia, is it really xenophobia or Afrophobia? Some people are asking today. Because actually what is happening is that the behaviors are, xenophobic behaviors in several parts of Africa, the African continent, are more towards non-nationals of African origin than towards non-Africans. That is the fact. And when we say xenophobia, South Africa. Is it a South African problem? No, it's not a South African problem. Notwithstanding the fact that the South African case has become notorious because of the intensity and also the frequency of what is happening. But there are xenophobic attitudes all in the whole of Africa. So it is not an African problem, but it is a problem for Africa. Sometimes you discover that it's all these contestations about citizenship and belonging, this issue of indigeneity. In the whole of Africa, there are books, volumes written on it. Sometimes we Nigerians will think about Nigeria alone. Nigeria is not alone in that. There are volumes, examples. Let me just give you 2 examples here. High-profile cases. People do not know that the present president of Cote d'Ivoire, Alassane Ouattara, at some point he was denied, his citizenship was revoked. After being Prime Minister of Cote d'Ivoire, his citizenship was revoked. Former President Kenneth Kaunda of Zambia also suffered the same fate. At some point, he had to struggle to prove that he's a Zambian citizen. Our artists, musicians, and filmmakers, sometimes the image we create about our countries is what creates that kind of xenophobic attitude. Sometimes when you watch Nigerian films, it's just all about there must be some aspect of witchcraft. And I ask myself, I can't remember the last time I saw a shrine in Nigeria. I can't remember. I go to Nigeria every year. But everything is about, so when people are thinking about Nigeria, it's about either witchcraft, some medicine, some shamanism, and all those things. We've got to encourage, no censorship, but discourage media content that reify pre-existing stereotypes and prejudices. We've also got to encourage small and medium-scale business entrepreneurs to become more active in the lives of their host communities. They don't just go there to make money and repatriate their profit. When these host communities feel that you are not interested in them, you just want their money and take back the money to your country, they react. They react. And negatively, very often. Recently I had somebody was telling me, oh, you see this problem of xenophobia in South Africa, your problem begins when you take a South African in the village to your country, to Nigeria, and he sees the kind of house you have built. Oh, he has stolen our wealth to build a house in his village. But if we begin to also invest, social investment, as a corporate social responsibility. Learn their language, get to know them, and live with them. Make your life there and be part of the community. Nigeria has a large diaspora, so I've talked about encouraging people to learn their languages. But also, you know that recently Nigeria signed a Jollof bond with the United Kingdom. Probably, I hope we're going to eat Jollof rice today. So I was thinking of, why can't we start something seriously? As in, like those Confucius Institute, British Council, Alliance Française, why can't we begin something like a Jollof Institute to drive the country's cultural diplomacy initiatives, Jollof diplomacy? The Institute will collaborate closely with governments. We've got a lot to share. Our literary works, visual arts, films, music, cuisine, fashion. Do you know that I was just asking Father, I remember when I came to Rome, we used to have a restaurant around Termini where we used to go and eat. But today, I can't see any Nigerian restaurant. My friends sometimes tell me, oh, let's go to a Nigerian restaurant. Not in Rome here, as far as I know, except for those ladies who sell around Termini, hawk around Termini. Can't we do something about it? After all, there have sushi restaurants. When we hear sushi, we know that, oh, it's Japanese, we go to eat sushi. Why can't we do something about it? How about a Jollof Festival of Arts and Culture? Maybe this festival will celebrate every day. Jollof Festival of Arts and Culture. What about a Jollof Expo of Nigerian or the African countries here that your ambassadors, you have to know what to do. So I'm also thinking about something here that how about appointing giving an honorary award or giving somebody an honorary role as a cultural ambassador? There are Africans who are doing well in different countries. These who have distinguished themselves. Why can't we give them this honorary role? Just appoint them as honorary cultural ambassadors to Nigeria, to this place, or that place. You don't pay them nothing. But their presence, the very fact that I know, the very fact that, oh, this guy in Nigeria is teaching at Harvard, good. It's making name for Nigeria, not only Nigeria, Africa, for the image of Africa too. Why don't we give them such? And finally, in conclusion, cultural diplomacy, the economic gains of cultural diplomacy is neither immediate nor easily quantifiable, like in trade deals and other commercial exchanges. However, they have long-term benefits as they contribute to creating an environment that is conducive to economic exchanges, environment of peace and trust. A lot of times we are talking about how many billions did the president sign, how many deals did the president sign. Do you know how much the presence of Nigerians in China, the presence of Nigerians in Italy gives to Nigeria? Last year during our conference here, I talked about a lot about immigration, and I was telling you people about the remittances, the financial remittances. We're even talking about official financial remittances to Nigeria, to African countries. Some of them in some African countries, 35% of their budget, of their rather GDP, is from financial remittances from their citizens abroad. Money they send in. This is not even about the non-financial, the non-official ones. The one that you give, I give to Father Bill, take to my mother when you're traveling. These ones don't go through the bank. They don't know, they're not recorded. So my mother just goes and they change it, and that one is great. So in the end, I'm saying that as such, African governments should be interested in seeking in cultural diplomacy and seek to promote it vigorously, especially at this point in time. Otherwise, we are going to face a cultural backlash very soon because of this integration program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Do you see the synchronization from weaponization to the next one is even more interesting. Let me have the pleasure of welcoming Professor Ukemena to please give you what he has in store for you.
Your Excellency, the Ambassador Jara Umo, Your Eminence, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and of course those of you who are not sure. One of the advantages of being the next speaker to Dr. Mweke, actually there are advantages, but the big disadvantage is that he sets the pace that you cannot cope with. But the other flip of the coin is that he would have woken you guys up to listen to me. We talk about cultural diplomacy and also the global peace and shared prosperity. I draw your attention to shared prosperity. In our culture, if you want to do business, one of the things you present, I've come with one, just in case there isn't any here, cola nut. It speaks volumes. I do not want to dwell on that, but I want to draw your attention to the main theme of this seminar. And that is reflected in the abstract which I set out for this particular speech. It talks about humanity that is now facing challenges that is unparalleled in history. Many of these problems are global in nature, such as climate changes, depletion of the earth, and all these campaigns about earth depletion. What is central about that is that it demonstrates the hyperconnectivity. My starting point will be to concede as key and recognize the instrumentality of the quote which I've just gone through. For me, it shows the importance of this tool towards the theme of today. The institution's report, and this is maybe the only time I'll refer to it again, it acknowledges that current challenges around climate changes and all other things are, which also includes overpopulation, are part of the difficulties which we have to face. And I would also add to that for me, the needless human greed and pointless hostilities amongst neighbors and non-neighbors are central to the challenges we are facing, which cultural dynamics might be the answer and the way forward. It is at this particular point, when it is explained properly, that cultural diplomacy takes a center stage as the pathway to global peace and shared prosperity. Cultural dynamism is a theme that has been in existence. Well, the last time I checked, it's been around for centuries. And also, as I will try to explain here, it has been so through the evidence of history. And I'll give you some example. Today, cultural diplomats has also become a vibrant and innovative academic field and research field. It has been a subject of its own in some universities, and they pay attention to it. So this evidence of its practice can be seen through history. For example, explorers, travelers, traders, teachers, artists, etc. All of them can be considered as living examples of informal ambassadors or early cultural diplomats. Throughout history, and indeed of people, the exchange of language, religion, ideas, sports, Olympics, religion, all show levels of peacefulness. Throughout history as well, the interaction of people, the exchange of languages, and others all consistently determine and change relationships between divergent groups and individuals. When you carefully look at a carefully crafted and choreographed peace systems, which appears more useful and endemic, then you start seeing the product, the results in a positive sense. So for that, real peace must follow a process that is well crafted, with a willing cooperation, either individually or voluntarily or by virtue of systems of governance. Since 1945, the United Nations and the 5 permanent members of its Security Council, including China, France, well, not Nigeria, the non-member, have operated under the aim to resolve conflicts without war or declaration of war. But in modern times, if you look at the Institute for Economics and Peace, that's the same institution in Sydney, they are showing a lead in the development of new conceptual framework that defines peacefulness. Their works provide metrics for measuring modern peace relationships. At the same time, uncover the relationship between business, peace, and prosperity, as well as promoting a better understanding of the cultural, economic, and political factors that create and sustain peace. The institution deploys what it calls a Global Peace Index, GPI, which ranks 163 independent states and territories according to their level of peacefulness. What I say is that peace is relative. People should define what is peaceful within their community. Just like you would say that your right stops where the other person's right begins. Here I have talked about culture. Here I've talked about peace. And there's a thread that runs between the two before you can get to prosperity. There's the African proverb that talks about hunters who can work together to get their loot, but they cannot share it properly. So they spend so much time getting the prosperity, but can no longer share that. So in a sense, their idea of cooperation has got. One of such, and arguably the most efficient tool we have historically deployed in one of the organizations I work for, Reform Corporation. It's an international organization. And what we do there is that we've come up with this concept of brokerage system. Brokerage system becomes a program by which you are in a position to interpret or link two diverging cultures or businesses. To take off from Europe and go to any African countries with your business, expecting to reap 100% reward is a dream too far. I've always said, like for investors or people who go to places like Nigeria, that Nigeria is not just Nigeria. Nigeria is a university of Nigeria. You need to understand the culture, the dynamics, what peace means to the people, what profit means to the people. Disrespect to elders are not taken very lightly. The way their women are treated, all these are cultural dynamics that you need to familiarize yourself with before you make the leap of faith to move from A to B in search of greener pastures. But having said that, it is easier because the problem of the world is not wealth. Far from it. The problem of the world is distribution of wealth. You have the haves, you have the have-nots. And it's only by having a culturally appropriate tools in a well-defined peace environment that you can expect to have the dividends of your corporation. So that pathway in which we are talking about is deep-rooted in what we call the brokerage service. The brokerage service now brings the knows and the don't knows together and make the interaction between them less problematic. So there's never a better time to invest in Africa, for example, or to share your wealth in Africa than now. And this you can make happen profitably if you have due respect for people's interpretation of culture and peace. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much. To bring this session to a close, I will now have the privilege of inviting Honorable Antonio Morabito, who is from the External Affairs of Italy, to give us what we say, appetizer for the lunch. Please, 15 minutes. Thank you.
His Excellency the Ambassador Godwill George Gumon, His Eminence Cardinal Francis Arinze, Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. It's a great honor to be here today celebrating with you this great day, this big day of the National Nigerian Day in a quality of a friend. It's the best privilege that I can have. And it's an easy task to speak as a last speaker, as after this very interesting intervention of the distinguished professor. Professor Bede Ukewuye, pronunciation, I apologize, that was emphasizing a big problem of our world, the fake news, the problem of how communication, how the virtual world, how internet has modified our life in worst way. And he was mentioning the most ancient fake news that was in the Genesis, the snake, that still is among our life, the modern life. If Professor Beda allow me, I would like another moment in which fake news become spread. That is the Babel Tower. That became, I think, very similar to our contemporary society. It was really interesting. And then, Dr. Paulinos, I want also to emphasize his intervention about cultural diplomacy in Africa. I think he presented to us really important, especially for us Western people, and also a country that received so many Africans, so many great Africans living in Italy, among the illegal and the legal, everybody. And he emphasized very well the problem of xenophobia, the African integration, and considering that importance of cultural diplomacy for this coexistence. I think in some ways he was mentioning what is the concept of a global city that we live now, and of course considering how big is African continent, but he was very well clarified this. And Professor Joseph Ukemenam, I hope it's correct, who presented a very peculiar, very detailed presentation, I think focused on the point, the peace is not absence of war, but is ongoing process, and cultural diplomacy is part of it, if I get the point. And some of the speakers were mentioning about also integration and presentation. Why not Nigerian restaurant? I agree on this. I agree on this. Considering so many Africans they live here, and in Rome, they have to go to the Bangladesh and the Sri Lanka restaurant. They don't have a restaurant, African restaurant. This, I think, is something that I will tell you about our presentation, the Italian. For us, Italian food is one part of the cultural diplomacy, and we promote it all around the world. So I go on this point, if my friend Ambassador Umo allowed to me. Actually, they put me a very difficult title, challenges. That is nice and bad word. Cultural diplomacy is a tool, and cultural diplomacy is the most important. Cultural dialogue is the most important as institutional dialogue, Cardinal Parolin said. It's very tough. Global peace and prosperity has to be reached to every human being on this earth. An integrational development of human beings, as a Popolorum Progressio was mentioning. But which are the challenges we are experiencing? We are experiencing, of course, a very negative impact of globalization. Globalization was presented as the dream of this era. I consider it's a very negative in majority of the case. And then Cardinal Parolin was saying something else, the danger of not only forgotten conflict, but he said we are gradually entering in a kind of third world where there is a danger of a poison affecting earth, environment, democracy and peace. We say in Italian, inquiniamo i pozzi della democrazia. Is one of the big dangers. Culture plays in Italy a crucial role in a foreign policy. Excellence in education, it's an historical vocation for Italy. Can you consider university, the old university in Bologna, in Florence, in Venice, La Sapienza di Roma, in Verona, and where the spirit of Leonardo, Galileo, Michelangelo, Dante Alighieri is present in the research, in the students, in Italy and all around the world. I would like to mention an example. There is a little city in Sicily, near Enna. The name is Airone. I don't know if you heard about this small city at the top of an hill, wonderful place. And this city of Airone was built on a very old city of the Hellenic epoch, 400 before Jesus Christ, 400 years before Jesus Christ. The name of the city was Morgantina. I don't know if His Eminence went to Enna sometimes, to this city, in the center of Sicily. This Airone, it was a normal city, and then where villagers, people, they were living. And a few decades ago, they started to do some excavation. They found an archaeological area, this among the biggest in Italy. This city was discovered, it was one of the most wonderful city in Italy. Not like Pompeii, but with a fantastic masterpieces of ancient time. But what happened, many of these masterpieces were sold, nighttime, to American merchant, to Swiss merchant, many museums, private museums abroad. And just to tell you that defending his own culture means also trying to get back something. So just 10 years ago, two great statues came back. That is the Metracore, is 2-meter statue from Hellenic Greek time, from Metropolitan Museum of New York, and Dea Morgantina. Dea Morgantina is a fantastic statue of almost that time, 2 meters 50 high, and they get it from Getty Museum, also in New York. So this is just to prove you that this fight against the illicit traffic of culture masterpiece is very important. Culture is, of course, the pillar, the main axis of our diplomacy, of our foreign policy. And I mentioned just few sectors to prove what the professor they were saying. language and literature and publishing, design, cuisine, virtual art, with particular attention to the contemporary art. And Cardinal Parolin was mentioning about the Contemporary Art Museum in the Vatican. That's one among the most interesting, because Paul VI was promoting a great mecenat of the contemporary art. Cultural and creative industries, including cinema. We need to do cinema together with Nigeria. We are among at this moment, Nigeria becoming the world like Hollywood. Why they don't produce cinema with the Italian? This is another challenge. Live show, science, research and innovation, university system, archaeology and heritage protection, museum system, tourism and territories, economic diplomacy. I don't go on this, but many of these items are the central subject that our embassies abroad promote, and there is a week of Italian cuisine all around the world in November. So we try to promote. For us, Italian cuisine is one of the points of the cultural diplomacy. It looks strange, but it is. So for this, I like very much the mentioning of the African
Jollof,
the African restaurant Jollof. Thank you, Ambassador. So, cultural diplomacy emphasizing as a strategic role in the current geopolitical scenario. It's not only a simple cultural initiative in international relations. It is in reality a crucial tool for foreign policy. We call softer power strategy. We need to be also study this kind of it's not a new subject. The professor said it's a very old subject, but university started to go deeper in this content, in this preparation, and I can mention with emphasis this course of the University of Cattolica Sacro Cuore that was supported by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with the title Cultural Diplomacy, Arts and Media for International Relations and Global Communication, focusing on digital diplomacy. What I most appreciate of this course, there were many students from all around the world that choose as a crucial instrument for reconciliation area between different culture, between ethnic groups, to create comprehensive understanding, support local economies and international cooperation. And also another target I think is very important, country also like Nigeria that have to, in some ways, that religious community, they face each other. Reopen dialogue, geopolitical, realize project of reconciliation post-conflict. And economic result of, I quote the professor, economic result of cultural diplomacy have a long-term benefit. It's crucial to promote it in Africa. I think the clapping is for the professor that he said this. Allow me to do a challenge now to the University Sacro Cuore. As a follow-up of this meeting, as a result of this meeting, why Università Cattolica don't go deeper to evaluate the possibility to have an exchange of experience between your university to create a kind of seminarium or symposium between your experience and African universities, starting with Nigeria, because of course Ambassador Umo has the first palm to organize such an interesting meeting during the National Day. So, starting with Nigeria, with the University of Nigeria, and we are here being representative at the table, and I'm sure also in the auditorium, and to consider how this can be studied together changing. Maybe you go to Lagos, to Abuja, and to meet your counterpart university, and some students, some professors can take part of your seminarium. This is actually the challenge I give to the university today, and the answer you can give to the ambassador.
Thank you very much.
Let me conclude that we need a new Pentecost in order to understand each other. And if you allow me, I would like to conclude with a motto of a Cardinal Francescarizza. The motto is coat of arms. May be the kingdom of Christ flourish. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In fact, I want to appreciate your patience. And like I told you, this topic, if I want to say more than that, you may think I'm a prophet. But actually, I was seeing it in the dream that cultural diplomacy had to be taught on this particular day, because it plays a crucial role even in our own well-being, irrespective of which country you come from. So clap for yourselves for the patience so far. Now, I will use just a few. I know that the lectures were very, very digestive. So there should be no areas of conflict or doubts and so on. But you see, to satisfy everybody, I will just give a few moments for people who want to perhaps clarify certain things. Just 5 minutes, and then we close, and then go straight and eat. Because this is just the phase 2 of this program. We have phase 3, food, phase 4, cultural displays. Is there any doubt? Okay. Yes, Ambassador Tuga. That's the Nigerian ambassador accredited to the Federal Republic of Germany.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, His Eminence, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for those very inspiring and thought-provoking lectures. I just want to touch on one issue in the discourse on cultural diplomacy. I think it is pertinent to lay emphasis on the issue of identity, which I think is fueling this irregular migration to Europe, if you will. And I think at the core of that is the issue of culture, which we're discussing here today, and cultural diplomacy. And culture often becomes the medium of defining what is true, what is real, because raw truth or reality sometimes needs to be tempered through culture. And now one issue that is central to that is the issue of truth and how what you create. I know we're in the presence of the Vatican here, and I don't want to run into trouble with regards to some heretical statements that have been made in the past. But if you look at Giambattista Vico, where he says verum ipsum factum, what is truth is what's made. And you look at what African countries have created in the past that was not recognized, and that some scholars even at some point felt that there was no history. Africa had no history before interacting with the West, with Europe. And if you look at some of these wonderful creations like the Benin bronzes, Ife, Nok terracotta, which goes back over 2,500 years. A lot of it has been looted. Most of it was looted. If you look at the sack of Benin, 1871, what transpired there. And the fact that most of these artworks today reside in Europe and other Western capitals. I think the starting point, the premise in discussing cultural diplomacy should be how those artworks should be returned, and that is why I was elated when Antonio Morabito brought up the example of how artworks found in Italy taken to the US were returned. Generation that are coming of age today. Thank you very much.
That's to show you that the lectures were well taken in, and you can see what it has generated. If I have, the opportunity of giving more time, I will talk to you tomorrow. But that's going to make our food to get cold. So please put a hand for him for that intervention. I appreciate it. Is there any other person? Yes. Father Pilar is the head of the Night Press, the Nigerian priests and religious and seminarians in Italy.
Yeah, it has been very, very interesting and quite enriching. I happen to work in a very rural community in that part of Nigeria where I was newly ordained, and I discovered that a lot of young people were getting into drugs, and they were taking Indian hemp. And we worked out so much. They were taking drugs and getting intoxicated and becoming very useless to themselves and the society. And so we traced it out. It was difficult. You could arrest one today and the next day you found another. And so I traced out to discover where this crop, this herb, was being planted. Those that cultivated it, we had to reach out to them. And from there, we reduced the quantity of Indian hemp that could be available to young people. You see, when we talk about cultural diplomacy and how peace can enhance that, and then you ask so many questions about the level of arms that could be in the hands of vulnerable people, that most often the same raw material that can be used to produce very sophisticated weapons of mass destruction can be used to produce valuable products like tractor mounting implements for agricultural purposes. And vulnerable societies like Africa, where you have arms in the hands of people who are completely hungry, it's a very, very difficult challenge before cultural diplomacy, amongst many other things. I asked the question, how do you consider these discussions when you meet at your forum about how much arms manufacture is made available to vulnerable societies, and how much you regulate also the quantity of these arms, because it's a very big challenge to us, it's a very big challenge to the world of today in respect to peace and the promotion of cultural diplomacy. Thank you.
Well, I was saying before, we want an integral development of every human being on this world. So of course, if there are things that promote war or promote in some ways weapons that not bring peace, is not for us, is not acceptable. For this, I think talking about cultural diplomacy and all what means in terms of challenges, in terms of strategy, it's a good way to understand each other much better, to know each other much better. And I think also the presence of so many Africans in Italy can help us to understand much better the African culture. In Italy, majority of the people, they don't understand what means Zambia or Tanzania, or when we talk about New Guinea, so many people, they don't know the names of the countries. So in some ways we are obliged to face the reality, of the power, the human power of Africa.
You know, when you read the works of anthropologists, you discover that there are two narratives. There are those who were talking romantically about Africa, and there are those who really didn't know Africa and were destroying Africa. So it's left for us now, even our own part, to bring a counter narrative. What is our own narration of our story? We don't allow other people to tell your history. You tell your history, you create your own history. Secondly, about our artifacts. The conversation is on. It's a very strong conversation now about taking back our artifacts to Africa. I have my opinion about it. we have to be realistic. We do not have for now, in so many African countries, the kind of environment, the institutions, and resources and technology that will keep these artifacts. So what am I saying? I am saying that they should recognize that these things belong to us, pay us royalty for them, let those things remain in your museums for now, until when we ourselves are able to have enough good spaces for it. Otherwise, we take it back, it gets bad, or it becomes like what happened in Timbuktu. You know what happened in Timbuktu? We destroyed that history ourselves. So that is my opinion about it. You can have your conversation. We can have a conversation later, but that is my opinion. It's not your time.
Thank you very much. So right now, it is time for me to present some souvenir to these gentlemen and ladies who have done so well to ensure that this symposium was a great success. Please put your hands together for all these people. Thank you for coming. Thank you very much, Dr. Antomeke. You're always answering a call. Yeah, Prof, thank you very much for coming all the way from London to grace this occasion and contribute immensely. Prof, thank you very much. Pleasure, and we hope when we call on you again, you will be here. Thank you very much. Thank you. Hello, my friend. Thanks so much for coming. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure we have had a very rich and purposeful discussion here today, and at this point I would like to invite us to have our lunch. While we are having our lunch, we have two cultural groups that are going to entertain us here while we are having this lunch. The Edo Cultural Group and the Catholic Group. First of all, for us to have this lunch, I would like to invite Your Excellencies here seated to please come forward with our panelists to please step down and let us move to my right hand side where we have our meals. We have, of course, food served from Nigeria, including the popular jollof. You have the opportunity today to have a taste of that, as well as the Italian cuisine.
When you see a woman with a bishop, you don't know. Are you ready now? Baby girl, show them. Show them. Mr. Flavor, party on! Shake it.
here with Nigerian Ambassador to France, Her Excellency Dr. Mrs. Modupe. We are here to find out from her general assessment concerning the symposium organized by the Nigerian University of the Holy See. She came all the way from France. So, Your Excellency, what is your general view concerning the symposium?
I'll start by saying that my name is Modupe. The symposium was very good. It's an innovative way of celebrating essence and people coming together. I like to say all aspects of the misunderstanding of the fact that living together, the fact that arts and the ways in which people get together. And the way we show through our culture, our norms and values, what we want to do. Nobody is going to tell our story.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We have been speaking with the Nigerian Ambassador to France. It's a pleasure. It's still CTV Nigeria here in Rome, covering the anniversary event of Nigeria, organized by the Nigerian University of the Holy See. We still speak with some other dignitaries as time goes on. We are here with the Nigerian Ambassador to Germany, His Excellency Yusuf Maitama Tuga, sorry. Your Excellency, you have participated at the symposium. What is your overall assessment of the paper presentations, especially with regards to our country Nigeria, because whether we like it or not, issue of cultural diversification is also a problem. How do you think what we have done here will go a long way in unifying us as Nigerians?
It was a wonderful idea. The papers were intellectually stimulating, and the issue of cultural diplomacy is something which is what I touched on, because we talked about our cultural diversity. It's not our doing. Nigeria was created by external cultural that anchored our definition of our identity as Nigerians. Beneath, for instance, we talk about the North Carolina, some of it is 500 years old. We talk about pieces as well, artwork. All of that resides within Western capitals, and let us not even begin to support the counter-narrative that we are not in a position to take such art pieces to us. Because where were they? Who was taking care of them when they were stolen? When they saw them, they liked them. I think one of the substitutes should be at the center of the discourse on cultural diplomacy. We have a very strong identity. We have something the rest of the world. So much young Nigerians they love development. We create that narrative to encourage them to remain so that people the lack of self-worth that is the driving force behind the development.
Thank you, Excellency. It's a pleasure having you here too. Thank you.
Likewise.
This is still Catholic Television Nigeria CTV. We are here with the Nigerian Ambassador to Switzerland, His His Excellency Baba Mabudu. Your Excellency, you are one of the invitees to this August Symposium organized by the Nigerian Embassy to the Holy See. We want to just know your general assessment of the symposium.
Cultural diplomacy, world peace and shared prosperity. Aim at learning and expressing the culture. I think diplomacy is the
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you for your time. We hope to see you next time. Thank you. We are here with the chief host and the convener of this August Symposium, His Excellency Ambassador General Godwin George Umo, retired OON, Nigerian Ambassador to the Holy See. Your Excellency, we would like to know, first of all, what actually informed the theme of this year's symposium.
Thank you very much. I want to say that cultural diplomacy is actually at the center stage of many academic and non-academic discussions as a soft power which any weak nation can leverage to launder its image and extend the frontiers of influence. And when I looked at it and I said, Nigeria belongs to that category of country without military might. So we may as well use the other side of influence and power to protect our relationship and get more friends and of course do business, because the world these days is about having partnerships and information to do business for mutual prosperity. So that's what informs my decision, my choice for the theme of this conference has been cultural diplomacy, global peace, and shared prosperity.
Thank you. The central theme is cultural diplomacy, and we know that Nigeria is a country with a diversified culture and ethnic nationalities. Do you think that this type of symposium will go a long way to help us unite as Nigerians, considering our ethnic background?
The answer to this is because the diversity in cultures in Nigeria should possibly be seen as a mosaic, which should rather unite us. And if you look at the people, for instance, when you see people open up his feathers, it is just the combination of all those that make the people the beauty that it is. So also, Nigeria can leverage the multi-dimensional facet cultures available in the country to gain the necessary power to do so many things. And I believe that Nigeria has got fantastic cultures to showcase to the world and bring about admiration, appreciation, and therefore, influence.
Thank you. One of the presenters raised the issue of fake news. Fake news, we know, is one of the things currently undermining the unity of our country, Nigeria. What do you think the government of General Muhammad Buhari can do to handle this ugly situation?
I want to believe that it is not by censorship that you can curtail the issue of fake news. And of course, the aftermath, the effects of such fake news, but rather is in education, educating the people to the level that they can differentiate between fake news and real news. And then, of course, the issue of ethical consideration has to be in focus because when people lack morals, that is when they engage in certain things that are detrimental to the society and themselves. So, but if there's a high standard of morality in the society, which can only be rejuvenated through the church, the school, the government itself, and of course, the parents, because, like we said, charity begins at home. So if the parents themselves are not exhibiting any moral rectitude, why would we expect the children to? So when the parents are doing well, the school takes over, the church and the mosque, and then of course, the government itself is setting a good example. I think the moral rectitude will be there, and therefore the issue of fake news will be a thing of the past.
Thank you. I think since you assumed the office of the Nigerian ambassador to the Holy See, you have been witnessing a lot of academic gathering like this. Do we expect more of this during your time here as the ambassador of Nigeria to the Holy See?
Thank you very much for the question. And I want to say quickly too that education is the cornerstone of any government. And of course, when people are educated, several things that we take for granted will be conscious. Now, if I don't simulate this kind of academic environment where people come together to learn about even new things, they will go about the ignorance and it's not going to help any situation. So I think that besides, just moving around diplomatic parties and all that, we need to create a forum where we can educate our people and bring them at par to what is happening in other parts of the world.
Thank you. We have been speaking with the Nigerian ambassador to the Holy See, His Excellency General Godwin George Umo, OON, retired. Your Excellency, we thank you for your time. We expect to hear or to witness more of this in subsequent years. Thank you. Congratulations. Here we have here one of the presenters, Very Reverend Father Dr. P. Rupije, CSSP. P. Rupije was once a professor in the Spiritual International School of Theology at Enugu State, Nigeria. Currently, is the Assistant Superior General Holy Ghost Congregation. So he says here in Rome, Father P. spoke extensively on fake news. And every Nigerian knows what fake news is. We want to find out from you, what do you expect the government of Muhammadu Buhari to do with regards to the rule of fake news?
Increase surveillance and legislative structures to prevent the dissemination of fake news through social media. Secondly, educate people on the discernment about what is false, fake news, destroys humanity, and consequently.
Thank you. We are speaking with Dr. B. CSSP. We are here also with one other presenter in the person of Very Reverend Father Dr. Paulinus Chukwuode. He's a lecturer at Pontifical Gregorian University here in Rome. It seems that our cultural diversity of being embraced is now a kind of being a cost to Nigerians. How do we handle it?
Actually, yes, it's true that our diversity should have been a great blessing to us. And I'm very proud of our diversity. The only problem we have now is that we're not able to do it. But then we should understand that managing diversity is a continuous process. It's an ongoing process. It never ends. However, the difficulty we have in Nigeria, we are not able to design good institutions that are going to help us manage our. So I think the problem of Nigeria now is that we are not able to design institutions. Our politicians come to terms with the fact that this whole call for structural somehow we have to sit down and talk about the
appreciate your presentation today. We hope to see you some other time. The event of today, organized by the Nigerian Embassy to the Holy See on the occasion of the Nigerian 59th independence and the 43rd anniversary of Nigerian diplomatic relations with the Holy See. Before we sign out, I must appreciate the CTV Nigerian management, the video crew headed by Mr. Jonas Guriyoma. I remain your presenter for CTV, Reverend Father Primus Ilana CSSP. Thank you. See you some other time.
Jesus.